Hello, students of history. It is Miss Gooding, and I want to briefly talk about the Monroe Doctrine of 1823. First of all, what you need to understand is that through a process of wars, right, the French and Indian War, the French pretty much left the continent of both North and South America. And then after the American Revolution and the War of 1812, England kind of exited as well, but Spain was still hanging on. So there was a lot of Spanish colonization still in the Americas. However, they were starting to lose their colonies, and specifically an example of that would be the Mexican Revolution. The Mexican Revolution was fought in between 1810 and 1821, and they finally won their independence from Spain in 1821. So Spain was losing its colonies and losing grip on both North America and Latin America. So the United States, as an up and coming country with not a huge strong reputation around the world quite yet, did not want further influence from Europe, and they didn't want any more European countries meddling in the affairs of the United States. And so President James Monroe and his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, started to kind of think about what to do. And so the conclusion was the Monroe Doctrine. So at this point in time, in addition to all that I just said, there was growing American nationalism. So a pride in our country, the movement west, and there were definitely territories applying for statehood, especially after the Louisiana Purchase. And after the post-war feelings of 1812, the War of 1812, there was this newfound pride in the country. And so, you know, President Monroe really wanted to protect all of that. And again, the political issues of the time were really complicated. Not only did we have the issues that I've just mentioned, but we also had, the issue of the Missouri Compromise. When states applied to statehood, were they going to be free or were they going to be a slave? We also had issues with, Native Americans losing their land that they had been on for generations, of course. And so there was a lot of pain in our country. And all of those are really national issues. But we also have foreign policy issues. And so that is what James Monroe decided to tackle. So John Quincy Adams, who was, again, he was Monroe's Secretary of State, he encouraged him to announce the Monroe Doctrine to Congress at one of his meetings. And so, in essence, there were four parts to the Monroe Doctrine. First of all, that the Western Hemisphere was now closed to future European colonization. So no longer would European countries be allowed to colonize according to the Monroe Doctrine. Second, if the European nations were to try and colonize, the United States would see it as a threat. So that was the second one. The third one was that the United States would not interfere with colonies that already were in existence and under the control of European nations. So they would leave those alone. And the last one is that the United States would also, in turn, stay out of European affairs. So this was a very significant document. It still is referred to, and it was definitely looked back on, and used through, World War I and World War II. And, Teddy Roosevelt and FDR used it to, to kind of generate national support for isolationism. And also during World War I, and then again during World War II, that isolationism was kind of celebrated and reinforced using the Monroe Doctrine. But it was very significant, and it really was our first piece of political, taking a strong stand against European nations. And it was, for a young and up and coming country, it was a pretty strong stance to take with these monarchies that had been so powerful throughout history in Europe. So thank you for listening. I hope that helps you understand the Monroe Doctrine.